A very good evening to the hungry and foolish audience present here on a Sunday evening. Well, I'm a storyteller, so I'll be sharing a few stories, starting with my own. And the idea I want to talk about is entrepreneurship, which I think today, of course, is a very widely known idea. But what is entrepreneurship exactly? Is it about making money? Is it about having the biggest company in a particular industry? Is it about being a unicorn? Is it about being featured on the front page of the Economic Times? It could be these, and it could be something more than this as well. So I'm just going to be sharing this idea with you. And this is where my journey of entrepreneurship began many years ago when I brought out this magazine called Jam, Just Another Magazine. Do you know why we called it Just Another Magazine? Because when we tried to register the name Jam with the Registrar of Newspapers, they rejected it. But this was the only name we wanted, so we came up with a solution by calling it Just Another Magazine. And in fact, we got a lot of free publicity because of this. People always wanted to know, why do you call yourself Just Another Magazine? And I think when we started this magazine in the year 1995, I was a graduate of Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, who was dumb enough to do the MBA, but then I didn't take the placement because after 2 years of studying marketing, finance, and all those other things, and doing my summer training in an ad agency where I did a survey of 300 housewives who were using detergent powder, I realized that I couldn't spend the rest of my life doing this kind of stuff. And I remember the words of Steve Jobs when he lured John Scully to join his little unknown company called Apple. He asked, do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to change the world? And I thought I cannot sell credit cards, detergents, whatever it is. I want to do something which is more meaningful to me. And I had already been a freelance writer through college, so I went back to writing. I worked with the Times of India for 2 years. And then with this, confidence of youth, I thought that I've learned everything that I need to know, and I should start my own publication. And this is what it was. So it was a pretty raggedy piece of, I won't say it's a very glossy magazine. It had 16 pages with one sheet of color. But it was very different from what was available in the market. If you see the first headline, it said, "We don't print headlines." And so it was very quirky. It was inspired by Mad Magazine. And the idea was that it should be a platform for young people to express themselves. So we had reporters in about 300 different colleges who wrote articles for it. And when we launched the magazine, we used these same young people, these reporters, to wear our T-shirt, a Jam T-shirt. And on the back, it said Quality Walls Ice Cream. And this was our launch, because we could not afford hoardings, we could not afford anything. So we had to be much more creative. And I think that's when I realized that how can a very small idea take on a very big industry? This is what usually happens, that the person who starts as an entrepreneur has to use jugaad, has to use creativity and resourcefulness to launch their product or to market it, to create something that's going to make a difference, create a buzz. And initially, the big companies don't notice them. But over time, that's how they become more popular. They grab a market share. And that's what happened with this magazine, too. So it was a pretty wonderful 15 years I spent as the editor and publisher of this magazine. But around the year 2008, the magazine industry got disrupted because most of our readers became viewers and they became addicted to their mobile phones and to the internet. And we could not make the transition to this new era because printed magazines had a certain business model and digital required a totally different way of thinking. So in fact, after 3 years of struggling and making a loss and trying to reinvent ourselves, we kind of, I think, decided that there is not much of a future in printed magazines, and we stopped publishing Jam. So it was a very difficult time because, it's like your own baby whom you have brought up to a certain level. But then we decided that it's time to move on. And this is when I wrote the book Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish in the year 2008. In fact, I remember when we got this project from IIM Ahmedabad to write this book, we were really going through a huge crisis. In fact, I think at the time when I started writing the book, we used to keep the electricity or air conditioners off in our office for a few hours a day so that we could save on electricity. Because there was a real crisis. At that time, there was a global crisis, so people were not advertising. So it came at such a time, but I think for me, it was a culmination of all the things I had done in my life. I had knowledge of business as an MBA, I was a writer, and I'd been an entrepreneur. So when I went to meet the 25 people who were featured in the book, they shared very honestly their stories. They did not give me some kind of, very fake and PR kind of a story, which sometimes gets shared in magazines or newspapers because that's what the world wants to hear. I told them that, this is an educational project, so we don't want to mislead people about entrepreneurship. It's actually a very difficult journey. And we want people to know what exactly being an entrepreneur entails. It's not something, it's not a fad, it's not a fashion, it's not something you should do unless you're very, very committed to it. So each of them shared very honestly the ups and downs of their journey. And those are the stories that I share in the book, Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, which was written in a very simple language, not with management jargon. It was not written only for people who've studied business, but it was written as a story. Because growing up, I've been fascinated by stories. I've read Amachitra Kathas. I've, learned everything that I know from tales like Mahabharata, Panchatantra. I think all of us are like that. So I wanted to write a story which would bring out the human element and not only talk about marketing and logistics, operations, or strategy, which is what we studied in business school as a case study. And I think perhaps that's the reason why when the book came out, it sort of touched a lot of people. Even though initially we only printed 1,000 copies to distribute free at a conference, subsequently we brought out 5,000 copies. And the first email that I got from a reader who bought the book in a bookstore, it said that I read your book and I quit my job. So that's when I realized the power of a story. And I don't take credit for this. I just say that, the desire was within this person, but he or she was probably afraid. And when they read this book, which had stories of 25 people, who are ordinary individuals like you and me from middle class backgrounds, who've not who've always been brought up to, follow a certain formula of life, that study well, get into a good college, then get a good job, then get a home loan, then start the whole process again with your children. So that was the kind of formula we'd been brought up with. And there was a belief that, okay, maybe, Dhirubhai Ambani has done it, but he's an extraordinary person. So there were stories of Ambanis and Birlas and Piramal, so they are business families. Or there are stories of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, but there were no stories of people like you and me. So I think this is what sort of caught the imagination of people. And my book got really bad reviews, a couple of reviews which are quite bad. But the readers actually appreciated it and shared it, and some people said that, I'm distributing your book instead of Diwali Mithai this year, and so on and so forth. And they became the evangelists for this book. And so basically I reinvented my career from being a publisher to being an author. And I feel there are hundreds of stories of inspiring real people in this country. But we always want to read stories about someone like ourselves. So because the first book had stories of MBAs from IIM Ahmedabad, a lot of people wrote to me saying, oh, so maybe I need to go to IIM to become a success story. So then I wrote the second book, which was opposite of the first, which is about people who don't have a business degree, or some have not even completed school, but they too have done extraordinary things in their life. And it became a whole series. And this book, Poor Little Rich Slum, is about the spirit of enterprise in Dharavi slum. So if you pass through Dharavi, a lot of times you look at it and say, oh God, it's an ugly eyesore, and we wish it wasn't here. But the World Bank estimates that more than $650 million worth of goods and services are produced in that 1.2 square kilometer radius of Dharavi every year. So if you go inside, 90% of the residents, they are not working as somebody's driver or peon or cook. They are actually self-employed. They run small industries. They employ other people. So they may be living on the ground floor, but on the first floor they'll have a workshop or a factory where they'll be doing textile, embroidery, leather. I'm sure many of you have gone and bought leather goods. So it was a very eye-opening experience for me to do this book, to go there and know that, entrepreneurship is not just like if it's a glass building which says SCZ or incubator. All around us there are entrepreneurs of different size and scale and ambition and different levels of success. But they're all people who are contributing to the economy. They're all people who have power in their hands. Because imagine if these people said that, look, we live in horrible conditions, and they start agitating and, if they're dissatisfied with their life. Rather than that, they're taking a positive view of it. And they're trying to see how they can progress and, create a better life for themselves, their children. And then I wrote a book on women entrepreneurs, a book on entrepreneurs in smaller towns of India. So when I go to small towns, I see that most people want to come to the big city. Whereas today, I think the opportunity is in smaller towns, because with connectivity of air and digital and, education spreading everywhere, it's very possible to live in your hometown of Belgaum or Rajkot or Guwahati or whichever even smaller cities than that, and put up an industry which can have a national or an international impact. So I never planned that I'm going to write these books, but every time when I travel, I meet people, then I feel there's a need for this book, and then I write the next book. So I'll just conclude with a story from one of my books, Connect the Dots, which is one of my favorites. This is a story of Prem Ganpati, who came to Mumbai with just nothing in his pocket, like many, many people who come here. And he was not well educated at all. He not even completed his class 10. He didn't speak the local language. So the only job he could get was a dishwashing job in a Udupi restaurant. Now I'm sure you'll agree that's not a job that none of us would want this job. And if you had such a job, you'd probably be rather depressed with your prospects in life. But then Prem Ganpati had a slightly different mindset. After a few weeks, he told the owner of his restaurant that, can you let me serve tea in the afternoon when I don't have any dishes, so I can become a chai wala and go to the neighboring office and give tea. So well and good, he was allowed to do that. And within a few months, he became a very popular chai wala. So how do you think you can become a popular chai wala? Any guess? Conversations? Yeah, okay. Gossip? Okay. What about the tea itself? Okay, conversation and gossip. Yeah, I mean, you should come in with a nice smile and cheerful stories. Well, also I think, that all these things are important, but also the tea itself in India, we're very particular about tea. So somebody likes their tea very hot, somebody likes it without sugar, somebody wants lemon tea. So if I'm a good chai wala, I'll definitely keep in mind my customers' preferences, and I'll make tea according to that, and I'll come at the right time with the good stories, gossip, and a bright smile. And as you know, chai wala is a job with a lot of prospects, because our Prime Minister also started his career as a chai wala. So within a few months, when he became, a person who was very popular, one of his own customers said that, why don't I start a tea shop in partnership with you? I'll invest money and you can run the shop. And sometime later, he thought, why not also start offering food, because people want tea, they want something to eat. So he started selling dosas along with the tea. So now, don't you think that if I'm a popular dosa wala standing here at Century Bazaar, I might be doing quite well in life? I've seen like in one evening, at least 50 or 100 customers stop. Some of them stop in their cars and they spend about 80 to 100 rupees per dosa. So how much do you think you can earn as a dosa wala in Mumbai if you're a good dosa wala who doesn't have to pay rent also and doesn't have to 20,000 a month? A day? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know actually. We have to find out. Sometimes I think it might be really the best thing to just stand there and start this business because it's a very lucrative one. I'm sure easily you could be earning a lakh or 2 lakh rupees a month. So imagine a person who's just started a very lowly job and within 5 years he's earning 2 lakhs a month. So now he should be satisfied, right? But Prem Ganpati was a little different. And of course, he was very happy with himself. But then, when he went to McDonald's one day and he sat there and he observed what was going on, the question came to him that why is Mr. McDonald not here? And I have to stand at the dosa stall every day and make the dosas, but Mr. McDonald obviously doesn't do that. He has many, many McDonald's shops. So I should also one day have many different shops where I don't personally stand and make the dosas. So through his own common sense, through his observation powers, through his desire and ambition to do something more and, to grow, he was able to get this concept that there's something called a franchise or a chain of restaurants. And of course, he did take help of many experts, and the entire story is in the book. But now, today, Prem Ganpati is he's running a chain of restaurants called Dosa Plaza, which have about 30 outlets, including in Dubai and Australia. So, I think the idea at the core of being an entrepreneur is very simple. These are the words of Napoleon Hill. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. You see, Prem Ganpati conceived the fact that he could do something much more than what other people thought he was capable of. So any idea has to start here, and then you have to believe in it yourself. A lot of times we ourselves, we have an idea, but then we have so much of self-doubt. We feel that, I'm not good enough, I'm not qualified enough, I don't have money, I don't know how to do this. So we kill the idea within our own mind, within our own selves, before it can even have a chance to go further. So once you conceive and believe an idea, then you can take the steps to achieve it. Of course, you have to take the steps. I'm not saying just belief is enough. You have to take a lot of steps. But if we don't follow part 1 and 2, then those, we cannot reach stage 3 itself. So I think in my mind, entrepreneurship is really about solving old problems in new ways, right? And those could also be social problems. So when we look at my book, I Have a Dream, it's about social entrepreneurship. So let me just give you an example. So you have all heard of Akshay Patra Foundation. Recently they served the 3 billionth meal, that is 300 crore meals they've served in the last 18 years to school children in government schools across India. And it started as a very small program with just 1,500 students. And today they are feeding 1.7 million children a day in about 15 different states. So a social entrepreneur is a person who tries to create a scalable solution to a large problem. A lot of people do social work and the impact is good, but it's limited. A social entrepreneur thinks like an entrepreneur, thinks big, dreams big, and tries to create solutions which can, have a national or international impact. So I'll just leave you with this thought, especially for all students. When I go to colleges, I tell them that, you can have a big dream, but you have to start somewhere, you to start small. And one of the things that I think every college should have, they should allow their students to run one of the canteens. Because that's the best experience that you can get. There is no point in just having courses on entrepreneurship which are taught in the classroom, because unless you do it as a practical subject, you stand at the counter and sell a sandwich, you don't know what is being an entrepreneur. And when you make a profit for the first time, that's when you realize it's not very difficult either. So I think entrepreneurship as an idea is really about taking charge, about creating your own destiny. And it need not be only as in business. I think you have to just use these 3 qualities of passion, purpose, and perseverance for any kind of, any kind of goal that you have in your life. And you want to be a wildlife photographer, you want to be the top sportsman, you want to be a person who makes amazing films, you want to organize this event, you have to be an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a person who's a problem solver, who's a person who's makes things happen. And I'm sure there are many, many of you in the audience who already do that or want to do that. So I wish you all the very best to stay hungry, stay foolish, dream big, and make all your dreams come true. Thank you very much.